Welcome back to the channel. We're back today and we're back talking about Wrexham Football Club as we always do. We're back in this seat bringing the Wrexham roundup. There's a lot to talk about in today's video. We're going to be talking about injuries. Of course, there's a whole host of players that are currently sidelined through injury. We're going to be looking at those and the possible return dates for them. We're going to be looking at some Kop news. Very exciting news has been released by the football club in lots of different areas regarding the redevelopment of the new 7,500 seater Kop Stand. We're also going to be talking about a possible signing that nearly happened in the summer transfer window, and we're just going to be talking about that. And I think it's very interesting that what we've heard over the past couple of weeks or so regarding this possible signing that I think a lot of you at home will be very interested in. And of course, we're going to be talking about that 1-0 win yesterday over Charlton Athletic at the Circus. Before we get into today's video, if you're looking for the best Wrexham AFC content, it's coming your way on YouTube. Make sure to get down there and click the red subscribe button. We're on the road to 28,000 subscribers. Also as well, let's go for 550 likes on today's video. Everyone watching this video right now, make sure to get down there and click the like button. And without further ado, let's get talking first on some injury updates. So Phil Parkinson has issued a number of injury updates, obviously earlier last week ahead of the game against Charlton Athletic. After what's been a very busy schedule for Wrexham Football Club. We had 3 games or so over the past 6 or 7 days, so it's a very busy period for Wrexham, and of course there's going to be some slight injuries, there's going to be players lacking match fitness, but I don't think in that sense the players that have played, it's more about the players that are coming back that Phil Parkinson is wanting to see have that quick recovery, of course, to add that extra depth across the whole squad, because it's a busy time in the Championship. The schedule does get very hectic at times, of course, with rescheduling due to games on television. We've had the Carabao Cup, there's a lot of fixtures, and it all seems to have crammed into one towards the end of October, early November. So Parky issued an injury update. We're going to be talking first on Elliot Lee, of course, a player that's been a prominent figure in the Wrexham squad over the past couple of years. He has been ruled out for the next 12 weeks following a knee injury that has been an issue for Elliot Lee over the past couple of months or so. He obviously played a couple of Carabao Cup games here and there. He was in the matchday squad for the Championship, but it got to a point where it was just too big of an issue for him to continue. He saw a specialist earlier last week and surgery swiftly followed for Elliot Lee, so he's going to be out for a minimum of 3 months. A lot of you at home watching this are probably thinking it's not that big of an issue, he wasn't playing in the league anyway, but it's still a player. If we suffer an injury to Nathan Broadhead, Josh Windass, Elliot Lee would have been that player who was knocking on the door to be in the squad, to even push for that space in the starting 11. We saw him score those 2 goals in the Carabao Cup, so he's obviously going to be knocking on the door. He's 30 years old now. Let's hope this injury isn't too big in terms of him getting back to full fitness. Let's hope he can do that, because I do still think he's that type of player that is going to push and push and push in training to obviously regain his spot in the matchday squad. So he's out for the next 12 weeks. If we're talking about Lewis Brunt as well, he's going to be ruled out for the next 12 weeks as well. 3 months is the sort of date which Lewis Brunt is going to be out for, following a thigh injury. Of course, we saw him come into the starting 11 away at Middlesbrough, and 10-15 minutes into the game he went down with an injury. The injury occurred, of course, just a few games back after coming into the starting 11. I think it was in the starting 11 for 1 or 2 games, and then bang, out of nowhere, a thigh injury. That's him ruled out for the rest of 2025. So it's gutting for, of course, Elliot Lee, but I think for Lewis Brunt even more, because he's come into the starting 11 following Callum Doyle's suspension. Obviously, the red card that he did sustain a couple of games ago, but he came into the starting 11. I thought he had a really good game when he did come in, and then, of course, to be ruled out for 3 months. But if you're looking in that sense, it sort of is a blessing in disguise, because we've seen Dan Scarr come into the starting 11 and ridiculous, what a player he is. He's not the type of player that you're going to see do all this fancy stuff. He wins the headers, he's very strong in the air, he's a good passer of the ball, keeps the structure well at the back. And I think, again, it's a blessing in disguise, because you're looking at this, Dan Scarr was our 3rd choice defender in that position, and now Dan Scarr probably would have ahead of Lewis Brunt and Callum Doyle given recent performances. So again, it just does work in a funny way, these injuries, but again, we wish all the best to Lewis Brunt and of course Elliot Lee in their return back. I think a lot of you will be interested in Ollie Rathbone now. Ollie Rathbone, a couple of games ago, of course, returned back to the starting 11. I think it was Oxford United at home, played the game and then wasn't to be seen since in the matchday squad. A lot of people were saying he had suffered a setback in training, but in Parky's words, Ollie Rathbone is fine and hadn't suffered a setback following his return from his long-term injury. His absence from the matchday squad was simply due to the obviously options we do have in midfield and the competition. Parky thought, given recent performances and recent minutes in the starting 11, that obviously the likes of George Thomason have priority over being in the matchday squad over Ollie Rathbone, who has not really played at all. But again, a lot of people might be looking at this thinking this is Ollie Rathbone out of the squad for the rest of the season. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think it's just going to be a couple of games time before he does come back into the starting 11, and of course just first the matchday squad. Jay Rodriguez as well, he's a player that I think we've all forgotten about, but Rodriguez is working hard in the gym ahead of a return back on grass. He's still yet to be back on the grass for Wrexham in training or in non-contact training, so it's quite a serious injury for Jay Rodriguez. We've seen Andy Cannon as well. He's slowly but surely getting back on the grass for Wrexham, but in terms of Rodriguez, I really don't know when we're going to see him back. Talking next on the Kop Stand, there's been a really positive update been issued by Wrexham Football Club regarding the redevelopment of the new Kop Stand. Firstly, the live power cable that ran underneath the site of the old Kop Stand has been removed after work started in early April to remove it. Of course, it's just been removed. I think it was the end of August they said it had been removed, so by doing this, it's enabled work to commence when the green light is given for the Kop Stand. It might not sound a big deal, of course, it's just a cable running underneath the Kop, but it's an issue that was so evident that it was stopping potential work being done on the Kop Stand. Of course, nothing was going to happen because there were so many other factors that Wrexham needed to sort out before we could start work on the Kop, but the live power cable, if everything was in place, this would have been a big issue and Wrexham would have been able to have started work on the new Kop Stand. So it was one that was talked on for a while that needed to be done, and I think it's a big step in the right direction. I think a new one, they said, had been put in place for the university student accommodation that is of course next to the Kop Stand, so it's a big step in the right direction and one that I think again is just going to benefit us massively, and it's one step further to getting the Kop Stand underway. The club has also been progressing in the purchase of land between the club's freehold to the back of the old Kop Stand and Crispin Lane. The club negotiated and completed the purchase of land from Wrexham University, and discussions are at an advanced stage to purchase required land from the Welsh Government. Now if we look at this further, again Wrexham need this land to start work on the Kop. As they've quoted in that article, both plots of land are required to create the footprint needed for the new 7,500 seater Kop Stand. So again, work is well underway for the Kop to obviously get going. It's sort of more work behind the scenes than actually digging up and getting the Kop Stand underway. So there's a couple of things that need tweaking, a couple of things that need sorting out, and if we're looking as well, planning permission has been put in place to increase the capacity of the Kop from 5,500 to 7,500 seats. Again, we've seen Michael Williamson talk about it on a podcast. It's such a decision that makes so much sense, because if you were to go for that 5,500 seater Kop Stand, it would then require the Kop to possibly shut. It saves money and it saves just a hell of a lot of time and resources if we are to go straight in for that 7,500 seater Kop Stand, which is likely to be approved by the council. I think it's just a perfect decision that's going to be made by all the parties involved in this, because you're looking at the demands to get inside the racecourse ground on a match day. An extra 2,500 seats on a match day isn't going to do us any harm, and like I said, would save a hell of a lot of time if Wrexham were to put it as 5,500 and then just 2 or 3 months later think we've made the wrong decision, we need an extra 2,000 seats. So let's hope it can get approved, because again, it just makes so much sense. I know I've said it so many times on the channel with these Kop videos, but it finally feels like there's progress being made with the Kop Stand. There's finally progress being made for something that we were excited about 3.5 years ago, back in 2022, and there's starting to become evidence to back up that Wrexham will get this Kop Stand finally up. The grand stand that is going to just overlook Wrexham. The plan for the Kop was, of course, for it to be up for the under-19s Euros next summer in June. I doubt that's going to be the case, but either way, I think you're looking at maybe into the next season, if we're in the Championship, that's when it's going to be up. So we're going to be talking on that topic regarding a possible signing in the summer transfer window. Now, a few of you might skip this part of the video, but I think a few of you might be interested in this sense, because I know a lot of you like the transfers, you like the insights that I do bring onto this channel, but I thought the article and the interview that Michael Williamson did was really interested, and especially the perception that some agents and players have on Wrexham regarding possibly signing for the club. Because if we're looking at Christian Eriksen, that's the player we're going to be talking about. We saw Michael Williamson speak on the approach that Wrexham did make for the Danish midfielder. he confirmed there was a legitimate approach made to Eriksen and his agent in the summer, of course, of 2025 after he left Manchester United on a free transfer, but Eriksen and his agent didn't want to join Wrexham because they thought the priority from Wrexham's end would be to get a story out of what happened to Christian Eriksen for the Welcome to Wrexham documentary. Now, a bit of an insight if you don't know what happened with Eriksen: the Euro 2020, of course, he did suffer a cardiac arrest in one of their games live on television. I remember watching it at my mate's house, just seeing him collapse on the pitch. It was probably one of the most devastating football stories, and it could have been one of the most devastating football stories there was in the whole of history. I think it was a moment that just shocked the nation and shocked the entire world that were watching that game, because it was broadcasted live on TV. Everyone who was watching that would have saw it. So I think in that sense it sort of is quite disrespectful on Wrexham's terms. I think the agent said they'd had multiple offers to make, obviously, a documentary out of that, but you're looking at an actual football club, an established football club that has so much history behind us, has the third oldest international stadium in the world. It's 160 plus years old. If Wrexham were to sign Christian Eriksen on a basis that the priority would be to get a story out of him having a cardiac arrest on the football pitch, I think it's quite disrespectful. I do think it is quite disrespectful, because that's not the route Wrexham have been down over the past couple of years in terms of signing players. Yes, the documentary has a huge impact on the growth of Wrexham and the audience that Wrexham have gained, but to be signing a player and to have that assumption that Wrexham will be signing Eriksen to get a storyline out of him, especially when Eriksen is probably going to be one of the best players in the Championship. If he would have come to Wrexham, he'd have just torn the league apart. But to think the priority would have been to get that story out of him, to get that commercial gain out of the tragic incident which happens to Christian Eriksen, I think, again, is quite disrespectful on Wrexham's terms. And if we'd have gone forward with this transfer, I think there would have been questions raised as to the agent involved in this and just the words that he did say, because I think it is quite disrespectful, especially on Wrexham's end, when the approach would have been completely legitimate by us. And I'm sure, Michael Williamson, Ryan and Rob, Parky would have looked at this possible signing of Christian Eriksen and not even factored in what happened, and not even factored in, the other side of what possibly could have been gained for Wrexham on the documentary, the sit-down interviews with Eriksen. I don't think that would have even crossed their mind. They've said, of course, he was based locally in Manchester, so the commute wouldn't have been that far to sign for Wrexham. It was just a question as to whether he wanted to drop down a level, which, again, for his terms, I think it would have been a massive level, dropping down from the Premier League to the Championship. I think he ended up in Germany for Wolfsburg, but again, I was quite disappointed when I did hear Michael Williamson speak about this. Of course, like I've just said, I understand that the popularity of Welcome to Wrexham, and it's just sort of what everyone knows the football club as now, but as a Championship club, especially emphasis on the Championship, it is a multi-million-pound league. It's one of the most well-regarded, well-respected leagues for quality in the whole of the world. So to have, in this sense, them thinking that Wrexham are prioritising Christian Eriksen's story in the documentary over this, it's not how we've gone about things under Rob and Ryan, and I'm sure it never crossed their minds when approaching Christian Eriksen. It's massively disappointed. I would say we've dodged a bullet, but I really like Christian Eriksen as a player, as a person, but I think his agent on this sense has just been a complete idiot. And I think it does sort of just raise the question as to whether this has happened before, because obviously Wrexham will be targeting the more high profile players. Of course, we try and get players from the leagues above us, so I would love to know if this has happened before. I think it would be bizarre if Wrexham were to have got Christian Eriksen just for commercial gain, because he would have been on such a high wage just to sort of, just use him for that documentary. Again, I've spoke about it enough. I just think it's ludicrous. Let's move on to a more positive topic. Wrexham 1, Charlton Athletic 0. It was a brilliant return back to the Circus for Nathan Jones, just months on after we battered them on our own patch to get promoted to the Championship 3-0. We've come back a few months later and we've extended our unbeaten run in the league to 5 games. That might not sound a lot, but considering we've played the likes of Coventry City, top of the Championship, Middlesbrough, second in the Championship, Charlton going into this game in the playoffs, we should be extremely happy with the progress that we have seen in league form, in performances, in structure of the pitch, in defensively. We're not conceding as many goals. Going forward, we look better, we look more confident as a team. We're getting players back from injury. We just look like we're really gelling as a club now, and we're really gelling as a team. And I saw someone say, and I think it's the perfect analogy, it sort of goes back to the start of the takeover, the first full season, 21-22, when we signed a completely new squad. They needed just that sort of 6 or 7 games to really gel and get to know each other, and it seems like this is happening to this Wrexham team. We're 13th in the Championship. We've just beaten Charlton. We're coming off, that good point away at Portsmouth. We've had some really good results in the past couple of weeks, and let's hope we can just build on that and keep the momentum going into, obviously, after the international break. Speaking on the game itself, it wasn't a game that's going to go down in the history books for being one of the best games you've seen at the Racecourse ground. The first half, it had its chances. It wasn't the most enthralling of halves. Charlton could have taken the lead inside the first minute. Max Cleworth then had a really good chance at the other end, but I think 0-0 going into the second half was just an understandable result because both teams had half chances, but second half there were so many more chances. You could see both teams were going to get 3 points. Charlton were chasing the points towards the end. Kiefer Moore, that golden chance at the back post. Any other game, you're going to get a player right at the back stick, putting the ball into the box. Kiefer Moore headed it across. It must have literally just gone across the goal line. Disappointing because you start to think of that term, is it going to be our day? But and then 10-15 minutes later, a confusing decision at first, but a blatant handball when you watch it back. Josh Windass stepped up and showed his experience to bag us an important 3 points yet again at the Circus. Nathan Jones being bitter at the end, saying the only time he heard Wrexham fans when they were singing the song that he gave them, blah-de-blah-de-blah. But at the end of the day, Nathan Jones' Charlton Athletic team were not good enough to come to the Racecourse ground and get a point. We've severely humbled him. I think he has been severely humbled. He's still being cocky after his press conferences, but again, they're doing well in the league, we're doing well, but in terms of at the Circus, Nathan Jones has been beaten once again and been made to look a complete and utter clown. I think we need to talk on Arthur Okonkwo as well the past couple of weeks. What a few games he has had in the starting 11. He has taken his opportunity so well, of course, returning back after Danny Ward's injury. A lot of people are probably thinking, why was he even dropped in the first place for Danny Ward? But he has come in. Some of the saves he's made is incredible. His distribution has got better. His decision making has got so much better. And, we're going to be lucky to keep him in the next couple of years because he's just going to get better and better as he gets older. At this moment in time, he's a Championship keeper, could probably play in the Premier League, so we're really lucky to have him. And again, let's hope he can keep that form up for the next couple of games. So yeah, that is it for today's video. If you did enjoy, make sure to drop a like, make sure to get down there in the comment section down below. Let me know your thoughts on the Charlton Athletic victory. Again, it's a big one. We've got that break now until Ipswich Town away in a couple of weeks' time. Yeah, until then, do all that good stuff, and I'll see you in another video. Take care, guys. Up the Championship Reds.